on a multitude of issues. I would say on nearly every issue, wherever Mayor Pete is at, Mike Gravel is right there. He is just as progressive as Mayor Pete and then some. So Mayor Pete loves the war on drugs. He's going to legalize marijuana, but everything else is going to stay illegal. Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and Mike Gravel are opposed to the war on drugs. You think the war on drugs has succeeded? No, the drugs have won. Also, you need to keep your damn laws off my body. All we can do is reduce the harm if we truly cared. But you have Mayor Pete is in favor of the war on drugs. So is Kamala Harris. Mayor Pete doesn't have much of a foreign policy whatsoever. Mayor Pete isn't for the universal basic income. Mayor Pete isn't for instant runoff voting. Mike Gravel is. Mike Gravel supports ranked choice voting. Mike Gravel supports the universal basic income to eliminate all poverty, just like Andrew Yang believes. So Mike Gravel is better on a host of issues besides just UBI. Unlike Andrew Yang, he's not just a single issue candidate. Andrew Yang actually has 100 policies on his website, but UBI is his big thing. The universal basic income, essentially that's the star that he is hitching his wagon to. So on college education, however, Mayor Pete is actually better than Mike Gravel. Mayor Pete wants free college for all poor and middle-class Americans. And so even though Mayor Pete is triangulating with many of these major issues, that helps me, and that helps, my family, and that's going to help all the people that I know. So what, the rich people aren't going to get free college? They could pay for their own college. So in a way, that's I'm okay with that because it helps me, and there's a logic to it. But it's free college. Mike Gravel doesn't offer free college for anybody. And so they have a host of, a bunch of planks to their policy, and I'm going to go through them because if one of these get elected, then we'll know, where they stand on the issues, and we can, sort of predict the outcome to know what. Mike Gravel wants to change the bankruptcy laws to make it easier to discharge educational debt. Right now, if you can't, get out of your fines, you can't get out of your child support, and you can't get out of your student loans. So bankruptcy, right, you could screw over all those creditors, all over those workers, all the people that build all your stuff. You could screw those people over. Declare bankruptcy, and then they'll just, all have to fight over the scraps. And so he's going to allow student loan to be discharged through bankruptcy. So the bankruptcy, is there for a reason if you can, anyways. So Mike Gravel is going to change the bankruptcy laws. He's going to establish a commission that will explore debt forgiveness or reduction for students who sought degrees under false pretenses. Both of those apply to me. Also, after 30 years, debt is forgiven. So after 30 years, college is free if, you don't pay for 30 years. So Mike wants to immediately reduce the student loan payments for millions of Americans by ensuring that the American government doesn't profit 1 cent from its educational loan servicing, and that the students get the same interest rates as the wealthiest bank. Any profit the government does realize will Gravel is going to explore a blanket partial reduction in the principal of school loans for recent graduates, the bailout for the people, and forgiveness for debt beyond a certain period after graduation, 30 years. Propose a 10-by-10 student loan emancipation act. So none of this is free college. All this is, essentially getting the best deal out of college. Not free college, but getting the best deal. How can we get the best deal? He also says he wants to get the ratio of administrators to students in our colleges to 1 to 50. It is right now 1 to 21. He wants to get it up to at least 1 to 30. But in the 1970s, he says that the ratio of administrators to students was 1 to 50. 1 to 50. And he says if we can get back to that level, college would be much cheaper. Yeah, and much more effective, too. The way I understand American education system, from the time you're kindergarten all the way, to graduate school, you ain't shit. You're nobody. Shut up, sit down. I'm the boss. I get paid, and you do a bunch of work for nothing. And then eventually that's somehow going to work out for you. Or maybe it won't. Who gives a damn? I got paid. That's all that matters, right? So if you're an administrator, if you're getting paid in school, it's better to get paid, better to be paid than to be a student. The students are on the bottom of the totem pole. And they're the customer. And they're the customers. So how much brainwashing does it take to convince the parents and the students that they ain't nothing? No, you ain't shit. I went to college. I know it all. You ain't shit. Shut the fuck up. No, sit down. Shut up. I get paid. I got the power, and you get nothing. And then people wonder why people act crazy. There is this, I want to just talk about the Stanford prison experiment. So they had this experiment right after World War II to see how in the hell did all these so-called good people, enforce these atrocious crimes. And so the Stanford prison experiment, they dressed one group of people as prison guards and the other group of people as prisoners, and they're college students. So they're all the same age, right? So you got, a bunch of 18, 20-something prisoners and prison guards. And all they did, they put on the uniform, and they were pretending that it was all real, but it was in the basement of, some administration building in college. So it's all pretend. They're going to have to shut this entire case study down because they said that there was actual trauma that was happening. So what happened was when the college students put on either prison guard uniforms or prisoner uniforms, depending on the uniform, that's who they became. If you were a prisoner, you had no power, then you were forced to stay in a subservient, and if you're a prison guard, then you acted all arrogant and crazy, so it got crazy. Essentially, the prison guards kept on torturing the prisoners until they had to pull the plug on the whole thing. Now, there is a movie about this, and there's this, I've heard the actual audio recording, and the guy is, the prisoner is essentially going crazy. I remember a person that I once knew also looking at oppression as if it was normal and fine and dandy, but the resistance to oppression as odd and peculiar. So when, you have this prison guard with the glasses saying, hey, boy, you do this, you get in the line, you get this, you do push-ups, then that's okay. That's fine and dandy. That's totally. What happened with this one prisoner was he had enough, and he was in his jail cell, and then while the other prisoners were doing, handstands or something, and they were chanting something about, prisoner number 309 is not complying, prisoner number 309 does not comply, so they just kept repeating this, essentially, dehumanized him. He's just 90, whatever I said, and then he's just a number. And then they were putting him in solitary confinement, and then they were sitting there acting like the prison guards were saying that the prisoners were all being punished. That all the prisoners were being punished. And, because of the actions of that one prisoner who was having a hunger strike because of he's having a breakdown. And so he's in the cell by himself, solitary confinement. All the prison guards are, lining the prisoners up and trying to get him to submit. Just come on out and start doing the exercises. Just go along with the flow. Get in line. Conform. And the guy in the prison cell is just, I'm losing my mind. I don't understand. I guess I'm saying is that resistance doesn't look pretty. Resistance doesn't look pretty, right? So just think of the slave master, right? He's confident. Hey, do this, do that. He's got a booming voice. He's articulating every single sentence. If one of the slaves try to, stand up for themselves, but, recognize that they can't overcome the whole thing, they'll stammer and they'll stutter and they'll try to get it out. Then the oppressor will make fun of them for stuttering, and that the whole point of that is to make sure that they will never become anything. Oh no, you stuttered. You don't matter, so I don't give a shit about anything you have to say. There is this one scene in Powder, movies from the 1990s, Powder, about that really pale white kid. And the pale white kid, he's going to school, and this one jock comes up and says, hey, and he's like eating a biscuit, what are you doing around here? And he's just sitting there fucking with him, right? And he's, an asshole, and he treats him like shit. Eventually he tries to attack him and shit. So I was watching it, and this person I was with, they saw that scene, and when the jock was like, hey, what you doing around here, Powder? Powder was like, well, it just kind of comes and I goes, I'm just sitting here today. The person I was with was like, why is he acting weird? Why is he acting weird? So coming up to somebody and be just, hey, what are you doing here, huh? Oh no, you playing with your silverware, but you got a little food there, huh? You eating food? You're sitting in a chair. What you like that broccoli, huh? That broccoli, just eventually just keep on riffing until something, maybe you might say a joke or an insult or something. But the whole point is it's one of just being shitty. It's one of just oppressing them and saying, I don't like you, I want you to leave. And then when they don't just leave, then, violence is going to be perpetuated upon them. And violence is one of the worst crimes out here. I think everybody deserves a right to peace, safety, security. Why would we protect some people from violence and not other people from violence? So the moment that guy was sitting there, right, to my friend or to the person I was with at the time, they thought that was okay, to be an oppressor, to be a fascist piece of shit, to be the jock who's mocking and making fun. Well, that's fun, that's entertaining, right? The cool hand Luke guy at the Stanford 10x10 Student Loan Emancipation Act, Mike Gravel does, where the students can opt into a plan to repay by pledging 10% of their salary for 10 years. He's going to ask the schools to forgive in part or in whole the debts of those who do not graduate. All right, you didn't get a degree. Initiate a program that allows graduates to pay a % of income instead of a fixed amount. Expand a program that forgives the debt of graduates who work in rural areas or with underprivileged populations. Close schools with high loan default rates and consistently low employment placement success. Police and prosecute all marketing representations of schools that might induce enrollment under false pretenses. Explore a gradual phase-in of a desired ratio of administrators to students of 1 to 30 as a condition of public funding as opposed to the current 1 to 21. Work with the Department of Education to create an information database on all post-secondary education institutions, focusing on information such as average debt of the graduating student, average debt of discounting students who don't take out loans, average salary of a recent graduate, average salary of a graduate 10 years out. So data, just getting some data. Like that any university that receives public funding cannot increase its cost by more than the rate of annual median wage growth the year before. Amend or modify the U.S. News and World Report rankings. Eliminate the ability of any university to compensate administrators with incentives tied to their rankings. Require all universities with endowments of over $30 billion to contribute 1% of their total endowment each year, $300 million plus a year to the founding and operations of a brand new university in Ohio until it becomes self-sustaining, at which point another community will be identified. The Harvard creates a new university in Ohio tax. Revisit the tax exempt status for schools that have more than enough money to fund their operations in order to invest in that money back into the students at that institution. Invest in and support schools that are innovating and growing. So he's got essentially, they're all good ideas. I like all those plans, but it's not free college and it's not college forgiveness. So it's like, well, how does this apply to me? I got 6 figures, and Spalding University was a waste of an institution. Spalding University, they are criminals and they're pieces of shit. They are, they're crappy. They stole my money, and Pete, on the other hand, so all that was Mike Gravel. Pete, on the other hand, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he says we need, affordable higher education in order to get free. We need freedom. So he's proposing debt-free colleges for lower-income families, which we can't just care about just the poor. There is, 20% of Americans are poor, so that's 1 out of 5. But we need to, take care of everybody. Because when you take care of the poor, then it's a race to the bottom. So everybody's like, oh, no, are you poor enough? No, I'm dirt poor, man. I eat, dirt. I literally eat dirt. That's how poor I am. Well, hell, you get all the government programs in. You're the poorest of the poor? Well, hell, you get all the money. So, we need to give a shit about everybody. They're talking about higher increases in Pell Grants, provides for basic living expenses, keeps up with inflation. Poor and middle-income families at public colleges will pay 0 tuition. Historical black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions are vital for this country and our communities. More money for black colleges, confront student loan debt, provide more support for students entering public service, ensure the highest degree of transparency and accountability for higher education institutions, apply strict standards to for-profit higher education institutions. So, I agree with all those things, but essentially what's going to affect me, those Pell Grants are going to affect me and, my children at least. Confront student loan debt, that's pretty vague. So, he did say poor and middle-income families at public colleges will pay zero tuition. So that's free college. That's free college. Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he doesn't offer, universal health care, universal child care. It's not even really universal, free college, but it's universal free college for the 99%, which really, that's all that matters. The 1%, their fucking greed is just sucking the rest of this nation dry. Do you need a boss to be able to behave? You don't know how to act and behave. You can't, you can't say, hey, go over there and get on that machine. You can't tell, people what to do. The workers can